Students, today we will discuss about the second half of the heredity and variation. Now, what is characteristics? It is detailed appearance. It is the detailed appearance or behavior of a particular form or a particular function. For example, the forelimb of the human being is the characteristics of the human being. Two hands and two legs, four limbs of the human being are the characteristics of the human being, and that plant can perform the process of photosynthesis. This photosynthesis is also a characteristics of the plant. Classification: it is the arrangement of the organism into a series of the groups based on physiological, biochemical, anatomical or other relationship. Evolutionary relationship with the classification: if two species have more common characteristics, then they are more closely related. If the two species have more common characteristics, then they are closely related. The more closer the species are, the more nearer they have a common ancestor. For example, a brother and a sister are closely related and they have a common ancestor, that is their parents in the first generation. A girl and her cousin are closely related but less related than her brother. The cousin have a common ancestor, their grandparents in the second generation, but parents are different. Thus, evolutionary relationships are traced in the classification of the organism. Now, what is homologous organ? Homologous organs are those organs which have the same basic structural design and development origin but have different function. They have different function but same basic structural design and development origin. Forelimb of the frog, lizard, bird, human seems to be built from the same basic design. The design of the bones are the same, but they perform the different function. Homologous organ are those organs which have different basic structural design and development origin. They have different structural design but have the similar appearance and perform the similar function. For example, the wings of the birds, bat, look like the similar but have different design in their structure. But wings of the bat are skin folds stretched between elongated fingers, but wings of bird are covered by the feathers all along the arm but perform the same function of the flying. Fossils. Fossils, they are all the preserved trace. These are the preserved trace or remains of the living organism of geological past. When organisms die, their dead bodies decompose and get lost, but some parts of the body may be in the environment and that does not decompose. Example, a dead insect will not decompose in hot mud. It will harden and retain the impression of the insect body parts and thus preserved as the fossils. Evolution can be worked out by the study of not only living species but also from the fossils. Now, kind of the fossils. Fossils are of the various kinds depending upon their differences in the appearance and degree of detail and the preservation. They are fossil tree trunk, fossil invertebrate, fossil fish and fossil dinosaur skull. Now what is fossil dating? The age of fossil can be estimated. The age of fossils can be estimated by the two ways. If we dig into the earth and start finding fossils, it can be assumed that the fossils closer to the surface are more recent to those found in the deeper layers. Second, by detecting the ratio of different isotopes of the same element in the fossil material. Formation of fossils. Fossils are formed by the formation of layer by layer in the earth crust. Suppose 100 million years ago invertebrates that were dead on the seabed were buried in the sand, and with time more sand accumulate and sandstone are formed. After million years, the dinosaurs living in the area die and get buried in the mud, which are compressed into the rock above the earlier invertebrate fossils. Eventually, again million years later, the bodies of the horse-like creature dies and their fossils are found in the rocks above the earlier rocks. But much later due to erosion, the water flows where some of the rocks and the horse-like fossils are exposed, and as we dig into the deeper layer, the older fossils are found. Now, what is the use of the fossils? Fossils helps to analyze racial history of the plants and animals. It will help in the racial history of plants and animals. Past climatic condition of the earth. It also explains the past climatic condition of the earth and to measure the geological time. Artificial selection. It is the modification of species by the selective breeding. It is the modification in species by the selective breeding. Animals or plants with desirable characteristics or traits are interbred. Here the desirable characteristics or traits are interbred with the aim to produce new strain of the organism for a specific purpose. Evolution by stages. Complex organ may have evolved because of the survival advantage of the intermediate stage. Complex organs like eyes are created bit by bit over generation, which is a very popular adaptation. The structure of eye in all organisms is different enough to have separate evolutionary origins. Organs or features may be adapted to new functions during the course of evolution. As for example, feathers are thought to have evolved from the warmth and later adapted for the flight. Some dissimilar looking structure like evolved from the common ancestor. Example, wild cabbage plant from which different vegetables are generated by the artificial selection like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, etc. The traces of the evolutionary relationships depend on the original idea that change in the DNA during reproduction are its basic events. Now, what is adaptation? It is any change in the structure or the function of an organism that make it better suited to its environment. Now, what is phylogeny? It is the evolutionary history of an organism or group of related organisms. Now, evolution versus progress. Evolution versus progress. Evolution cannot be said to be progress from lower forms to higher forms. It seems to have given rise to more complex body design, even while the simpler body design continue to flourish. For example, human beings have not evolved from the chimpanzees, but both have the common ancestor. Human evolution. The study of the human evolution indicates that all of us belongs to the single species that is evolved in the Africa. The earliest member of the human species is Homo sapiens. The scientific name of the human is Homo sapiens can be traced there. DNA sequences have been used for studying human evolution. Due to the diversified human forms and features, skin color is the common way for identifying the races. Few thousand years ago, some ancestors left Africa while others stayed back. The residents spread across Africa and the migrants spread across the planet from Africa to West Asia, Central Asia, Eurasia, South Asia, East Asia, Indonesia, America, etc. They went forward and backward with the groups, separating from one another or sometimes coming together. Like all other species, they were also living their lives to the best of their ability. Mendel's law of inheritance. There are the three laws of the Mendel. First is law of dominance, second is law of segregation, and third is law of independent assortment. First is law of dominance. In a pair of contrasting traits, dominant is expressed. Dominant trait can express and recessive is marked in the offspring appearance. Second is law of segregation or purity of the gamete. The two alleles for each trait separate during the gamete formation, and each gamete gets only one factor or alleles. Third law is law of independent assortment. Genes for different traits are inherited independently of each other, leading to the new trait combinations. We'll discuss about some important definitions. First is allele, a pair of the genes transferred from parents to offspring, one from the each parent, that is called allele. Homozygous allele, when the allele are same in any individual for a trait. Example, capital T. Then tall plant is homozygous tall plant. Small t, then it is homozygous dwarf plant. Heterozygous allele. When the alleles are different in any individual for a trait, example capital T and small t, it is heterozygous plant, heterozygous tall plant. Now what is genotype? A genetic makeup of an organism for a trait. Example capital T and small t. These are the genotype of a plant. Phenotype, the observable physical appearance or the characteristics. Example tall or short, wrinkled or round seed, and violet color and green color. All these are the phenotype. Now monohybrid cross. Monohybrid cross, it is the genetic cross involving one pair of the contrasting trait. Example, when we cross tall and short plant in F1 generation, all the plants are tall and ratio will be 3:1, in which only one pair of the contrasting character is involved. Dihybrid cross. It is a genetic cross involving inheritance of two different traits simultaneously. When we crossed round yellow and wrinkled green plant, the dihybrid ratio in the F2 generation will be 9:3:3:1. Now dominant. The trait that is expressed in the offspring is called dominant. Capital T is dominant over the small t. Recessive, the trait that is hidden and cannot express. Example, capital T and small t. In this, small t is hidden and cannot express itself, and the plant will be tall plant, heterozygous tall plant. Capital T is dominating here and it is dominant, and small t is recessive.